I also think feminism pushes the idea that one is better than the other.
Excuse me, it's ma'am.
Kwaku and I believe feminism has led to a better society. And so, since the Trump administration, there's been new waves of feminism. Feminism is a topic more talked about in the media, and we feel like there has been progress in this.
Yes, there is first wave feminism, second wave, third wave, and now fourth wave is coming. And third wave feminism really got its nice punch in the beginning of 2014. And now we're in this interesting area. But guess what? Feminism has helped a lot of people. I think it's good for the most part.
So, for the most part, we have women are more empowered. They're more likely to contribute to society. They're more likely to take risks. They're more likely to do things that they, wouldn't have done in the 1950s in the nuclear family when they were confined to just only the home. There's also some things, that's gone along with feminism. Sexual assault has gone down. And so I feel like that is a product of women being more empowered, being more vocal about their experiences. You got anything else?
Yes, and gender studies and things like that have given us a better lens as to how we view the life of people who are prostitutes, people who are trafficked, people who often are in the porn industry, right? There's a certain world associated with sex and gender that we've been afraid to look at, and a lot of problems in that world. And because of feminism, and because of these great female leaders who have expounded upon these things, we've been able to educate ourselves on some of the bad parts of society that we need to fix.
Yeah, and I would also, one thing I would add is I feel like for decades, we the capitalists will like this. We only had half the population contributing, or taking risks. And, so I feel as though the great thing about feminism is it's empowered and women. And now we've had a lot of women do miraculous things. And then we're all like, well, they can do miraculous things too. This is fantastic. And I think it all stemmed from, a wave of women from the very beginning of the Voting Rights Act, where they said, we believe that we have this right. And that's continued forward until today. And I think it's been overall good.
Yes.
And Wonder Woman. So we win, right? Wonder Woman.
That's going to be a tough one to stop. So we believe that feminism started out as a really good thing and has brought forth good products from those waves of feminism. But we believe that feminism in a lot of areas has gone too far and has become almost destructive in different aspects of the movement.
Okay, so one of the issues with feminism is there's a huge double standard, and for example, if a woman claims that she wants pure equality, most of the time they actually don't want true equality, because there are certain things in which the woman benefits from when there is some of a traditional form of gender roles, like, for example, a man paying for a date or a man opening the door. And so in my mind, it's like, if you're trying to push this like super strong sense of equality, then why does it make sense for the man to step up and to be more courteous in certain situations? And that's where there's kind of a little bit of a disconnect for me. And that's just one of the things that I see as a problem with today's version of the feminist movement.
I think my biggest issue with new modern feminism is that it's like trying to drive home the point that we're exactly the same. Men and women are exactly the same, and we have the same strengths and weaknesses. And I just disagree with that. I think men are good at certain things naturally, and women are good at certain things naturally. And I don't think that they can't be good at those other things. But I think naturally we have specific things that we're better at, like men and women. I also think feminism it pushes the idea that one is better than the other. It's the idea that men, because we traditionally go out and work and, we're the providers, feminism gives credit to the idea that that is somehow better than staying home and raising a family. Now, I'm of the opinion that if the man wants to be home and raise the kids and the wife wants to go out and make the money, that's totally fine. But the issue that I have with feminism is that it's very strict in the sense that I've seen a lot of like very far left extreme feminists look down on women that decide to stay home. That might be just what they want to do, and that's what bothers me, is that now it's suddenly, if you're not making money, if you don't have a career like a man or what they perceive to be the ideal situation, you're not a real feminist. You are just giving into the patriarchy, and that bothers me. I'm very much of the opinion that everyone should do their own thing.
So we understand that there are 4 men at this table, and none of us have the female parts of a body, but
As far as we know.
Don't
yes,
assume.
as far as sorry, I know. But it's called newsbros. So if you expected anything else, shame on you. All right, cross-examine.
No,
us.
what I'm saying is like we don't know all the issues.
We don't know all the issues, but it's guy talk, right?
Out of curiosity, do you guys think that men and women should be the exact same?
Yes, I want a society of genderless people walking around.
I knew it.
Zero.
I knew it.
Zero differences.
That's what I thought. I'm just kidding.
So there's a few things that we just need to get out of the way, right, from the
Right.
beginning. So there are physiological differences between men and women.
Mm-hmm.
I believe a lot of the patriarchy that we saw in earlier days stems from the natural strength that men have that like women don't have. And so for years that was valued, and so it created this structure, and now we're here today, and really it's not, men aren't in charge because of physiological strength, but it's just a consequence of our predecessors and previous societies.
Yeah, and I think in previous societies, women were treated unfairly.
Yeah.
I want to get that
Well,
out there
I
because
agree.
I do think that like the suffrage movement was dope, and I would have been in the streets probably riding for that stuff too. What were you saying?
Just to completely try to answer your question, so no, we can't be equal in
Yeah.
everything. I'm
No,
sorry.
of course not.
Okay.
The sheer fact that men can overpower women in situations of rape. I'm sorry, rape statistics, we need to improve it as best we can as a
But
society.
it's not going to be perfect.
But
Yeah.
in a situation men are simply stronger, and so that's true, and we're not denying
No,
we're
not
not
at all.
denying
Yeah.
that at all.
Yeah.
But there have been strides to equality, and I think we're doing overall good.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
How do you explain?
Doing well.
I do think that some of the strides have been good, but some of them have actually been counterproductive.
Okay.
I think that's the right word, right? Yeah. So in the Scandinavian countries, they're the countries that are kind of leading the way on getting those roles to match, like the male and the female role. And what's ended up happening is the countries that have the strongest legislation in that, they're actually, the men and the women are actually reverting back in a higher rate to their traditional roles. So it's actually having a reverse effect, and everybody was surprised to find that out.
What are you talking about? What legislation?
So, well, the thing is, anything that tries to put men and women on not equal footing, but equal outcome as far as employment. So, trying to put more women in STEM, for example. The legislation that goes in place to try and put more women in STEM has found to actually decrease the amount of women that go into STEM fields. It's a really strange phenomenon and you can look it up.
Well, no, I'm down. That could very well be true. So if it is counterproductive, then I'm down to strike it down and do something
well,
more
and so
productive.
that's why I'm kind of against. That's another reason why I'm kind of against this new wave of feminism is a lot of the policies that are going in place. They're actually counterintuitive. They're not productive. And I think that we're just getting emotional about a lot of these policies, and it's causing us to make decisions on things that don't have legitimate data to back it up.
Sure.
Well, I would say that any sort of social movement oftentimes has very little to do with legislation, with the exception of the Civil Rights Act and things of that nature, right? Or LGBT rights, or you do have to protect housing and employment and things like that. But with feminism, it is more of a social push. How do we make young men and women understand consent? How do we have a society in which women are encouraged to go into certain fields, are encouraged to go into higher education? That's more of what feminism is pushing for. You might get some bill that wants to fix around something here, but whether that bill is cruddy or not, it's not reflective of the
the whole-
overall
yeah,
goal,
yeah.
you know?
So through legislation, they need to be recognized as equal, and we still need to pass the Equal Rights Amendment, For women, we have one state missing. We need 38. There's 37. So, anyways, that's a side note. That's a little side note. But what was your last point, dude? Oh yeah, so like racism hasn't, like, right now there's not currently a law that says like black people are inferior in this situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've done a good, we fixed that, but guess what? Still, there's some racist people out there.
and it goes both ways.
So that's the trouble. That's the troubling thing, is we're at a point where there's not a ton. You know, some people will talk about like abortion is like a feminist issue, but other than like that and a few others, there's not a ton we can do with legislation. It's society needs to improve.
Yes. Yeah, that's why it falls
that's why
under
it's tough.
social justice,
And
right? Because that's what it
agree.
is.
So, do you want to go first?
You go first. You go.
So to me, I have an issue with. It feels as though the feminist waves have led to an overall decrease in sexual assault. Although, like, there you go, boom. That's why feminism is good. Like, what would you say to that? Like,
I would say that correlation doesn't necessarily it's not necessarily caused by
what's causing it?
Well, so for example, in the summer, ice cream sales go high and murders go high. But it doesn't mean that more ice cream sales lead to more murders. It's just the fact that in the summer, both of those things happen to go up. And so, like, it's a very they correlate with each other, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the cause of the issue. So the feminists may not be contributing in a legitimate way to the decrease in sexual assaults.
So
but-
so what is we would ask you then,
Why?
what is making sexual assault
So
decrease?
yeah,
I would think
more
that-
men ask for consent before they engage in sexual activity.
Yeah, which
like,
I think
so-
is a good thing.
So is that because of feminism?
No, and I do think that is a good thing, and I think it's good for men to be aware that, hey, like, there's some social norms that these women expect us to follow, and in that regard, I think that it has been helpful. I do, but like overall,
Good.
So,
Great.
question-
beyond
thank you.
that, there's not much.
Do you think that
Can I
The-
respond to that super
Oh,
quick?
yeah.
go
I
ahead,
just
dude.
think over the past 50 years, people have become significantly more like sexually promiscuous, right? So
That's true,
if you had
too.
taken a poll of men and women in 50 years ago, the like things that they would be willing to do outside of marriage would be much different than what they would be willing to do today. Okay, so I think that the decrease in sexual assault is due in large part to what was considered sexual assault back then might not be considered sexual assault now. Also, it's not as difficult to do those things like with consent now that it used to be. For example, like if a guy wanted to have sex with a woman, right? Back 50 years ago, most people you'd have to be married, right? Now, it's not really like that. Does that make sense?
You just pull up a dating app and say,
Yeah, and so
Cool.
I think the sexual assault has gone down because more people are open to having sex. So someone trying to force sex on them isn't.
You don't think
Well,
like there's been like spousal rape has gone down?
No, I'm not
That's a
saying.
thing.
I'm
That's
not. I'm
probably-
not saying
Because-
that. But I'm
Because
saying.
I would say just like the patriarchy, I feel like creates this like dynamic where the man in a marriage, nuclear family, expects something from the woman, and when he receives it, it's more out of obligation rather than both partners like wanting it. I feel like that was going down a lot more back then than it is now.
And it still is in the Islamic world. I'm just being honest.
Yeah,
I'm just saying how
Sure,
it is.
sure.
so
Unfortunately.
a question I have, do you think that some of the discrepancies you've named, like legislation being ineffective to have the same for women in STEM, do you think things like that what?
You trying to hold my hand?
Okay, take it easy.
Sorry, go
Only
ahead.
with
I'm sorry.
feminists. Do you think things like that discount the social good that feminism has done in the last 20 years? So we know more about what signs to look for at an airport or a baseball game to look at women who are currently being trafficked, right? We know what methods pornographers use to entice teenage
Yeah.
girls into doing things. We know these things. Do you think that there's ineffective legislation or perhaps a college board that did something stupid? Do you think that those are a bigger risk and those things sort of discount the goodness that feminism has done? Did that question make any sense to you?
I
Did I form it
understand what you're
weird?
saying.
Yeah.
I think like our problem. All right, so if you're talking about like feminism and the idea of women empowerment and women's equality, right? So when you're talking about like trafficking, women aren't the only ones that get trafficked. Kids get trafficked a lot, and more
Yeah.
than just than
Little boys and
middle-aged-
little girls.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more
Do adult
more
men
so.
get as trafficked as well?
No. What I'm saying is that like I don't think feminism is what led to us going after that. I think it was probably part of it, but I think the overall it was not specifically because of feminism. Second of all, the issue that I have with women, the new feminism of the idea of equality and empowerment is I don't think that it's good for society when women are writing slut across their stomach and walking shirtless through the streets, like these slut walks.
And that's a small group.
Or wearing,
it's a French group. You guys
yeah.
can say
or
that.
wearing, but that's the
You
kind
just
of
discounted. Hey, thanks, Eric.
that's the kind of feminism that I'm talking about.
No, but
That's
yeah,
what I
yeah.
find destructive. I think, as like I said before, overall, I think feminism was good, but I do think that it's becoming extreme.
Well, let me jump in on that too. So first of all, I agree with everything Barry just said. I also think that those people are like a very small minority of the feminist movement.
Yeah.
I agree with that. You guys would probably say that. But here's the thing that frustrates me: the normal feminists, that's what I'm going to call them, seem to try to degrade and bash and destroy the concept of masculinity and kind of put men down.
Who?
Instead of
So
it's more like
Now
let's
he's
pull-
bringing up toxic masculinity.
yeah, let's pull
Yeah.
men down in order to equal things out. Well, let's just pull women up and let's not worry about bringing men down to a lower level. It doesn't
So-
make sense to me.
We're at 6 minutes, just so you know.
Yeah, I feel like this is.
Can we can we talk a little bit?
Yeah. All right.
So, because I really want to.
Well, okay.
I want to jump. So, can you name some feminists who have that position of bringing men down?
Yeah, so there's a big movement on social media where a lot of women actually jumped on board where it was like don't have sex because men don't deserve it kind of a thing. And that it's like how can you put all men into this category of rapists and sexual assault?
Well, but was this really a movement, or was it 12 weirdos?
Yeah,
who,
and maybe it
got a
was
less
French.
than less
Okay,
than less
okay.
than 20% of so Twitter. There's
Well,
we're
what
talking
about
Twitter
Gillette?
politics.
Let's talk about Gillette.
Sure. Let's
So,
talk.
were
let's
you
talk about
guys in
Gillette.
favor of Gillette's toxic masculinity?
I mean, I'm overall like okay. It might have been like cheesy at moments, but overall, like toxic masculinity exists, and we can like why not talk about it?
And I think that as
I would
we've
say
been-
though that toxic masculinity could be like a completely like different topic. That we talk
Yeah,
about.
no, and I
think
totally
that'd be
get
good.
that too because there's a lot that they could branch off from it. But the toxic masculinity thing where we're focusing so much on it's causing, I think, and I'm going back to my thing where correlation and causation, right? So I gotta be careful. But men are struggling. Their grades are poor. They're getting locked up more often than they used to. They're
Private
literally
prisons,
having
private
issues.
prisons.
We concede that
Boys.
the feminists who are got tattooed slut across their chest, with like a million piercings, blue hair, and they have like they've covered their Converse and tampons and duct tape. Okay, weird. Those people are weirdos. They would be weirdos no matter what. We don't think they represent most people, especially not most people on the left. And if it means that I gotta make a tweet that says, "Hey, feminism is good. This girl is a weirdo," I will make that tweet.
Yeah, and
Okay.
and a tweet that says all white men suck literally no matter what. Like, obviously that's a bad tweet.
That
It's
also
not-
co-
it's
always
not a
comes
good
from
thing.
like another white girl who's in the suburbs who watched MTV once, who
Yeah,
wants to be
yeah.
woke, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, you got Arizona tea and kombucha, thanks.
I would also give you guys this. As we strive towards gender equality, men and women have like privileges. And I feel as though that there are some privileges that women have and where men are disproportionately affected. No, seriously, like
I'm not a part of this. No, I'm kidding.
No, but when it comes to like getting custody for kids in a divorce,
Yeah.
men are disproportionately affected, and we should also make strides that way. So
Okay, cool. And see, and that part there, I think, is left out by the majority of the feminist movement because they've got a mission that they're trying to accomplish, and so it kind of makes some sense because if you're trying to move the chains on something, you don't give them the other side any leeway, right? But I think that if we took a more rational approach like that, I think we'd get a lot further.
Yeah.
To be honest.
To add on to that, I'm 100% on board with like men and women having the same opportunities.
Same.
But where I kind of draw the line, and I think you guys would agree with this, is when like a movement like feminism kind of forces people into like, if you don't do this, then you are not a real feminist. Like if a woman wants to stay home, that's fine. Like
and she
that's
could
her
totally
choice.
be a feminist
You
and
know,
a stay-at-home.
I
Okay.
think the
Yeah,
idea
sure.
of like, yeah, as long as everyone has the same opportunities, it's okay for them to choose what they want. I 100%
and they will
believe-
naturally choose, and if when you throw out the dice, it's naturally gonna lay in a way that they're gonna be different. Men and women are gonna have different careers, they're gonna have different salaries because of the types of careers they go after, and so the opportunity needs to be there.
So
I
we
agree.
can't force the outcome. Yeah.
Exactly, and the outcome is always going to be different, and so this I don't want to get off in the weeds, but the outcome will always be different.
So one thing I would say though that I think we should be aware of, as there's progression in society, there are going to be groups that might be like uncomfortable at times. So during the civil rights movement, it's impossible to do some. A lot of these movements make certain groups uncomfortable, and so with feminism, there might be things where you're like, "But that's the way it was." Okay, let's just hold on. What's important. I think that you guys. It felt like you guys were making claims of like, well, now men have it like worse. Well, I don't know. I don't necessarily think that. I think that there's a lot of, but they're just noticing it more often. So the next, 15 or 20 years, men might get called out a little bit more on stuff. But like overall,
if they deserve to be called out,
yes,
then
if they
should,
deserve to be called out, they should. I'm just saying like I can understand why it's not super comfortable, but I think that's why you're saying a lot of what you're saying is because.
Okay.
Is that okay? Is that fair?
I get what you're saying, but
Yeah.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree. But
I think the common ground that we have is that like we're all on board with women having opportunity. Like nobody
yes,
wants
for
like women to not have the same opportunities as men.
Yeah.
I think if they can do whatever it is that they're doing like in their field, and men can do whatever, like if a woman is better at what the man is doing, like give the woman the job 100%.
So ultimately, the reason I consider myself a feminist is because for years, women have had this certain, they've been underprivileged in society, and we've made strides to that. Now, are there going to be a lot of negative side effects to even positive movements? Yes. So, Aziz Ansari, that shouldn't be happening, right, with the Me Too movement. But ultimately, things like the Me Too movement have been for the overall good. Less women are assaulted, men are asking for consent, and so ultimately, our sexual relationships with men and women, we're communicating more, and that's good. Feminism.
In my hometown of Houston, we're in the top 5 for trafficking in the United States. Not only was that always a fear growing up, because girls from our high schools would go missing, never see them again. They could be in Mexico, they could be in Russia. But also what hit home was, it wasn't just that was going on, it was that there was a culture, a rape culture in Houston. Of course, most men weren't traffickers, but there were a lot of assaults in my high school. There were a lot of these things, and it wasn't until we had started paying attention to these traffickers that we realized that there was a mentality that was shared among a lot of men who weren't these evil people, but did things and acted in a way that was completely inappropriate. Right? Now, no one's a perfect person, but that realization made me say, what should be done socially that can make sure women can walk outside and not expect to be catcalled, right? Of course, you got to be careful where you go, right? Like, I'm not going to walk around in the boons of Mississippi with Confederate flags going around, right? But perhaps if we can have a society where girls don't have to walk with their keys right here, always in defense mode, if we can make that society where that's not necessary, then I think we're doing a good job.
yeah, a lot of them have pepper spray nowadays.
Peppers, yeah.
It's pretty effective.
30 seconds, though.
So I just want to say that I truly believe that women and men should have equal opportunity. Like, so strongly, that's just through and through. Feminism of the past, I am completely and 100% on board with. And the biggest thing with this is I think that today's feminism, it has those negative side effects like Keaton mentioned. And I'm glad that you kind of admitted that there are negative side effects of today's feminism. And I think that for me, it's more just raising a voice to help people understand that there are negative side effects to a potentially good thing. And so it isn't that I'm against feminism. I'm just against a lot of the approach and a lot of the, over the top, trying to kind of tear men down in the process of trying to bring women to be equal. So,
Okay.
I think, again, just like Eric said, early feminism I agree with, and I think the idea of men and women having equal rights, totally on board with. There's two things that frustrate with me and that I disagree with is the idea of if you don't fit a certain mold or you're not in favor of a certain thing, then as a woman, you must not be a real feminist. You're shamed for those kinds of things. The second thing that I disagree with and how I feel like it could be spiraling out of control is the idea that men and women need to be the same, not physically, but they need to be the same in everything that they do. I think it's okay that men and women are good at different things, and I think
they
it's
like different
slowly, but surely, I think it's starting to be like they need to do the same things. Men and women need to behave the same way. But I think there's merit and there's positives to having different viewpoints and different things that you're good at, different things you enjoy. And so that's my viewpoint on feminism.
All right, thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, comment below, tell us your thoughts, and share.
Share.
Do it.
And if we're cucks, let us know.
Please. And I'm so pissed that you had to wear the same kind of shirt as me.
Well,
And
yours is longer.